Hi, everybody. My name is Grania. I am a compulsive overeater, and I am also the chair of the board of trustees of GreySheeters Anonymous. And I have another board member with me also. Joey is here. So Joey can wave his hands and you will see Joey. He's from New York, and he is also on the board of trustees. So we will be available to answer questions, if possible, after our speakers today. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the GreySheet. I turn them over to a qualified GreySheet food sponsor. I eat only what I've committed. I make my abstinence the most important thing in my life, one day at a time. And I've been abstinent since September 16th, 1994. And today we're going to hear from 4 of our members who were in GreySheet meetings when GreySheet meetings first started. There was a time when there was no such thing as the GreySheet. There was the GreySheet food plan as practiced in Overeaters Anonymous, but not the GreySheet community that we know today. It's a precious gift that is given to us, that we have a duty and a responsibility and a privilege of passing on to those who want it. And so what we're going to hear today, it was what it was like to create a community where this message, the GreySheet message, is distinct from any other message about food addiction and how we pass it on, because it works when nothing else works. So we want to make sure that it's available for those who come after us. We're going to have 4 speakers today: Nora, Peggy, Laura, and Kathy. And I'm going to turn it over to Nora, who's in California, where it's raining incessantly and where it's 5:30 in the morning, and she is still here to share her story with us. Nora.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Nora. I'm a compulsive overeater. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the clarified GreySheet. Nothing in between but black coffee, tea, or diet soda. My abstinence date is July 24th, 1977. So I've been abstinent just a little bit short of 45.5 years. When I first got abstinent, I weighed over 183 pounds. I'm 4'11". Little girl, lot of weight. I was miserable. I hated being so overweight. Today, I weigh between 102 and 103 pounds. When I got abstinent, the original GreySheet group was just forming. I was there at all of the business meetings for the original GreySheet group. We had our business meetings in a separate location on a separate day and time, so that we could distinguish ourselves from the many OA people who are coming to those meetings, many of them, I think, with the idea that they could do whatever they had been doing in OA previously, but extract what they thought was willpower, because they could see the GreySheeters were slimmer, happier, talking about being free of cravings, and staying abstinent no matter what. there were two things, I think, about what we were doing that were shocking to people coming in from Overeaters Anonymous. I speak here of people coming from Overeaters Anonymous because all these other food recovery groups like FAA and HOW, I don't think existed yet. These two things that were the most shocking were, number one, we only eat what's on the gray sheet. And if we have questions about eating what's on the gray sheet, then we ask our sponsor. And we find a sponsor who's experienced enough and caring enough to spend the time and set the boundaries with us. And the other thing that I think was shocking to people coming into our meeting who had one foot in what we were doing and the rest of the body in a previous program was that we did this no matter what. No matter what. Even when a family member died, even when we were in the hospital, even when we were traveling to another country, even when the doctor said, this is good what you're doing, but you should also eat the yellow thing that the monkeys eat, or you should also have a snack because you're hypoglycemic, or you don't have to do this on Christmas or Thanksgiving or a holiday. The early GreySheeters did not have the internet, email, a vast number of members like we have now to talk to about whatever, no matter what we experience. But we did have conviction, the early conviction, because for me, coming in at 183 pounds, so I came in, I had bulimia as well as compulsive overeating, but no one was talking about bulimia in those days. But I was getting up in the middle of the night and eating and then purging. At first, for a few years before I got abstinent in 1977, I would put a glass of mustard and vinegar and water in the refrigerator before I went to sleep. And then I had a little kitchen. I would take all the furniture that was loose in my apartment and put it in the kitchen, the bicycle, a chair, some other things, so that I wouldn't go into the kitchen in the middle of the night. And in the refrigerator, I would only have Weight Watcher food because I knew I couldn't have other stuff in the house or I would be eating all day long, all night long. Then I would get up in the middle of the night. I was not sleepwalking. And I would remove all the furniture, go in the refrigerator, eat very often raw frozen protein, no microwaves then, or drink the fat that's on the gray sheet that we can put on salad measured. And then I would drink this mustard and vinegar and water and make myself throw up. And then I got fancy and met someone in a therapy group who was using Epicac, a medicine that you can take after you've had poison to make yourself throw up the poison. And so I took Epicac. It doesn't work, girls. Don't try. You've got one foot in the exit. Don't try it. It's really bad. So I was losing some hair. My teeth were loose in my mouth. My dentist took my teeth and wiggled my teeth and said, what what is this? Your teeth, you're losing your teeth. Also, he said, your teeth look like a dog's teeth because you've lost so much enamel. That was from eating bones. And I had this idea that if I ate things that were really hard to chew, that it would be more satisfying. Nothing has ever satisfied me more than GreySheet abstinence. Nothing. The satiety that I have now and have had for many, many, many years means that I can weigh and measure my food scrupulously, carefully, the way we measure, the way a pharmacist is expected to measure drugs in a pharmacy. I can eat that meal, and then when the meal is over, I can go on with my day. It's not easy to tell my whole story in 10 minutes. I'm giving it a good college try. It's not easy to speak slowly either. I'm a New Yorker, native New Yorker, though I'm in California now. We talk about the New York minute as 1 second. But today, I'm a very healthy woman. I'm 77 years old. I bike 30 miles a week with my sweet husband. I'm a bodybuilder. We live in a place with a gorgeous indoor pool. Everyone who buys here says, oh boy, I'm going to go to that pool and I'm going to get slim and I'm going to work out. But hardly anyone uses it. The entire pandemic, I was at the pool at 5 or 6 in the morning. Nobody was there. I had it to myself. I also do yoga. My cardiologist calls me a fitness ninja. And I'm thrilled to be abstinent, but I do find that I'm surrounded by people who look to me like they need our program desperately. But no matter how enthusiastic I am about my food and what we do, it's an enormous leap for a compulsive eater who's suffering to say, I can do that. I will try that. And what I say to people about that is,
Nora?
yes, 2 minutes. I got it. Thank you, Phyllis. We only do one meal at a time. One meal, and then you distract yourself, you busy yourself, you read the literature of the program, you talk to other people in the program, and you don't go in the goddamn kitchen no matter what till the next meal. And there were lots of other things that I had to do. I had to make some rules for myself in the early years. One rule was I did not go in the kitchen after dinner time. Another rule was that I never prepared food unless it was just before I was going to sit down to a meal. This is just me. This is just me, what I had to do. I had to take myself, a totally undisciplined, rebellious, angry, wounded person who came from a very abusive family. And I had to say to myself, this I will do. One day, 1 hour, one meal at a time. And so I did that when I had an emergency appendectomy, when my mother died, when my father died. That was really a blessing when my father died. When a couple of weeks ago, they thought I'd had a stroke. I had a migraine, no pain. Weird story. And after the migraine, I lost my ability to speak and read for 30 minutes. I couldn't talk and I couldn't read. My husband rushed me to the emergency room. And then they put me in the hospital to investigate because it turned out it wasn't a stroke, it was a seizure. I think I brought it on by having too much caffeine because I still need to learn. And my husband went home. We lived near the hospital.
Excuse me, Nora.
Okay, I'm just going to finish this sentence. And he came back with 3 weighed and measured meals for me, and napkins and paper and silverware. And I ate my own food the whole time I was in the hospital. Anyway, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. It's a pleasure to meet you all, and I pass the meeting back to the leader.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you. Thank you, Marcella, for translating. Thank you, Phyllis, for timing. And I apologize for not noticing the time issue. Our next speaker is Peggy, and I'm going to hand it over to her right away because she has to leave at the top of the hour to celebrate a GreySheet anniversary with somebody else. So Peggy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Peggy, and I am a compulsive overeater. And I weigh and measure 3 meals a day off the GreySheet, and I commit those meals to my sponsor. I don't eat in between no matter what. Abstinence is the most important thing in my life without exception, and one day at a time. I work to put this program first. Anything that I put before my GreySheet program, anything that I put before my abstinence, I will lose that. I'll lose my abstinence and I'll lose that other thing. And I'll tell you why in a minute from experience. And I am here at this meeting to build a defense against the first compulsive bite, a defense against the first compulsive bite, to fortify my ability to not take that first bite, not the second, the third, or the fourth. They don't matter. It's the first one that I'm here to build a defense against. So thank you so much for inviting me. It's really a privilege to be with this group. And thank you, Nora. It was amazing to hear you. I have been abstinent. I just celebrated 33 years of back-to-back GreySheet abstinence. However, so my anniversary is December 28th, 1989. However, I came into GreySheet just 2 years after Nora in Cambridge, Mass. in 1979. And Nora was one of the first people that I met. And my story is the story of getting abstinent and getting the miracles of abstinence when I was there. And I got abstinent for 5.5 years, which in the early 1980s was a very long time in those days. We didn't have people with decades of abstinence. And what happened was that I got a life back for the very first time. I am a desperate case when it comes to compulsive eating. I was morbidly obese. I've lost 2/3 of my body weight. I was about 270 pounds at the last time I weighed myself. And I weigh now about 115 pounds. I'm a fraction of what I used to weigh. And, but it wasn't even the weight, because I ate when I was fat and I ate compulsively when I was thin. I couldn't control my eating. I was an absolutely savage eater. I was absolutely run by the food. I had no capacity to run my own life. I was, at the time I came into GreySheet, I was a graduate student trying to get a PhD, and I couldn't study, I couldn't work, I couldn't read. All I could do was eat. And I got abstinent, and for the first time in forever, I could read, I could write, I could think, and I got a life back. And what happened in those early days was that getting that life made it possible for me to think that finishing my PhD was the most important thing in my life, because now I was abstinent. After all, I could start missing meetings and work on my dissertation, and I could suddenly, what became the most important thing in my life was finishing graduate school. And I didn't realize it, but I started missing meetings. I started doing little things here and there. And the tragedy was that in 1986, after 5.5 years of GreySheet abstinence, the day that I got my PhD from Harvard University, I picked up the food and lost my abstinence. I got my degree, and an insanity came over me. My whole family was there. It was a big celebration. An insanity came over me. I went running away and grabbed food. And for the next 3 years, my life was a living hell trying to get abstinent again. I got it here and there. It finally, in 1989, in December, I was living someplace else, but I started commuting to New York City at that point, which had a strong GreySheet community. And that's when I got abstinent again. And since then, I have put my abstinence first. So let me go back, though, to my first introduction to GreySheet and talk about what it is that makes GreySheet so different from everything else, including the other OA, which looks a lot like GreySheet. Superficially, it has some of the same language, that we're powerless over food. They use the 12 steps. They were inspired by AA, but there's something very different. And the first thing that I noticed when I came into GreySheet that I thought was really strange was this thing called the mantra. I heard people saying this long set of things that I just said, and that Nora said, and that everybody said. And I thought, wow, that sounds like a cult. That's really strange. What is it that they're doing? And so let me say both the meaning of the mantra, I finally started to understand, but also the fact of the mantra, just the fact that we say it, because people somehow often think that by not saying the mantra, that they're being kind of cool and rebellious and individualistic, and that they think if you say the mantra, you sound like an automaton, like a robot. And so the reason for the mantra, even before I say what's important that's in it, is that the mantra signals to everybody else that we are part of a tribe, that we are part of a fellowship. So the first thing that we learn in GreySheet is that I, by myself, am powerless over food. I am powerless over food, and my life becomes unmanageable. And then what we learn is that only a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Now, I am going to be honest with you. I'm not a religious person. For me, that power greater than myself is the fellowship of GreySheeters and Alcoholics Anonymous. It is the history, 100 years of history of millions and millions of people for whom the 12 steps have saved their lives. It is a fellowship that is so much greater than me, because by myself, I will weigh 500, 600 pounds and I will be dead by myself. I need to be part of a fellowship and a community. And how do I know who that fellowship is? I know it by the mantra. It's a language that transcends any kind of, Spanish, Urdu, Portuguese. It doesn't matter. If you're abstinent, you say the mantra. And it immediately communicates to me that I can turn to that person and say, help. I need help to not eat, no matter what. It's a way to communicate through a code that I can be completely vulnerable and honest about who I am, which is a person who is trying not to eat.
Peggy, you have 2 minutes.
Oh, gosh. Okay, thank you. Now, I need to know that you are weighing and measuring without exception in order for me to ask you for help about how to weigh and measure my food in a restaurant. In a restaurant, I'm uncomfortable, I'm awkward, I am embarrassed, and I don't turn to somebody who doesn't weigh and measure in restaurants, because they'll say, are you out of your mind? You want to make a fool of yourself? No, that's not who I'm going to get help from. I have to get help from someone who also has gone through the embarrassment initially of weighing and measuring in a restaurant. So I also have to hear that abstinence is the most important thing in my life without exception. When I first heard that, I thought it was crazy. What do you mean more important than your family, than your kids, than your job? That doesn't make any sense. But then I learned that if I am not abstinent, that I can't have jobs, families, relationships with kids. I can't do anything. It's like in the airplane when they say, if you're with a child, you put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And you think, oh, that's terrible. I want to save my child. I have to put it on them first. You put the oxygen mask on your child and then by then you're dead. That child might as well be dead. I have to do it, make it the most important thing without exception. I have to understand that only by being with other people and asking other people for whom they understand that it's the most important thing, then
Sweetheart,
I can
I'm
get.
sorry, it's time.
Okay, so let me just finish by saying it is dangerous to my survival not to know who I can go to for help. And that's why I need to know who does the gray sheet and who doesn't do the gray sheet. I can't survive if I don't know who my people are. Without a gray sheet posse, I am nothing. So that's my story about why gray sheet is the most important thing in my life without exception. And I'm going to have to go in a minute, but I'm going to stick around just a little bit longer. Thank you.
Thank you so much for making time for us, Peggy. I know you need to leave soon. The next person who is still with us, who arrived in the Gray Sheet community as it was forming in Cambridge, is now Laura L. And she now lives somewhere between Connecticut and Florida. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura to tell us what it was like when she got there.
Good morning, everybody, or afternoon. I am a compulsive overeater. My name is Laura, and I am abstinent today. It is the most important thing in my life. It is 3 meals weighed and measured from the Gray Sheet. I write my food down every day. I call it into my sponsor, and I don't eat in between no matter what. And that is the most important thing in my life. I am very excited to be here with all of you this morning. I got abstinent in Cambridge, Massachusetts, April 16th, 1982. I was 19 years old. I am now 60. And I planned to be here for 2 weeks. But God had other plans for me. When I came to the program and I saw the Gray Sheet, this is what they gave me. And it looked terrible, worse than death. No food, no food. I was eating when I got here foods we avoid. This was my diet. And I only ate these foods in order to get to these foods. This was only what I wanted. They told me that this first line on the Gray Sheet says, For carbohydrate sensitive people, man-made sugars and starches create a craving for more of the same. Therefore, these foods cannot be eaten at all. That to me was devastating news. I had no idea that certain foods set up a craving in me or an obsession. But I was living every day in a state of craving and obsession. And if I eat a little bit of those foods, it's the same as eating a lot. Because a little bit triggers obsession and craving, and I have no freedom. So when I got to GreySheet, I did not think that it was good news. This food plan was not of interest to me. I liked the idea of a food sponsor person. I thought maybe I could follow a food plan if I committed it to somebody, but I didn't want to do the GreySheet. I had somebody in those rooms offer to sponsor me on a different food plan. In those days, there were meetings where there were GreySheet people and regular OA people mixed. Somehow I knew that wasn't going to work for me. Partly because I thought, I have a story to tell, and I want to get up and tell my story. And if I don't do the GreySheet, they won't let me get up and tell my story. I was very important, you see. I had things to say. And I realized I couldn't be part of the group. I wanted their recovery, but I didn't want to do what they did. It was too extreme. So I left the rooms to try to find something else. And my food problem, my obsession, my cravings just got worse. I went to regular OA meetings where they didn't do the GreySheet. And it seemed like those people were fat and happy. And to me, GreySheeters were thin, but depressed. But I kept eating. After a few months, I decided I would go back to the thin and depressed people and get their help. But then I would leave because I didn't want to do what they were doing. We have an expression in GreySheet that says, if you want what we have, you have to do what we do. The thing is, I didn't want to do it. But I had no options because the food was so powerful in my life. So I thought I'll do it for just a little while. Here's the thing. The disease always looks for an easier, softer way. And GreySheet seemed very hard. And of course, the outside world says, isn't that extreme? You have to do that all the time, everywhere? My disease stays with me everywhere I go. If someone dies, I still have the disease. If I'm in a restaurant, I still have the disease. If I'm at someone's house, I still have the disease. If it's my birthday, I still have the disease. There is no vacation for me from addiction. And that's what the Gray Sheet community is about: food addiction and taking out those foods that set up the craving, and together in community, learning to live a life free from food addiction and working the 12 steps. I had a sponsor once whose husband started doing some other food plan.
Laura, 2 more minutes.
Great. And she was living with him as he was doing his food plan and she was doing GreySheet. And after a while, her disease saw what he was doing, and she thought, he's doing fine. He looks happy. He can eat some other things. He doesn't measure everywhere he goes. I'm going to try that. And that is the disease. And she left GreySheet. And so, as has been said, we need to stick together, those of us who do this, because the disease is always looking for a way out. As a nice person, I would like this program to include everyone. But this is not an inclusive program. It is not for everyone. It is for people who want to do this. There are lots of places for people to go who want to do other things. But for people who want to do this, we need to build up a strong protection. And I'm going to do one last thing. Give me one last second, because this is my protection between me and food. If I do make exceptions to the Gray Sheet, can you see? This is what I get. Which one would you rather have between you and the food? I choose this. Fuerte. This is the strongest protection I have. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Laura. Thank you so much. That was inspired. Laura's Gray Sheet with holes in it is famous in the Gray Sheet community for illustrating what happens when we start to let other messages come between us and our solution. Thank you, Laura. After Laura came to Cambridge, Kathy arrived. So we're going to hear from Kathy, who is going to tell her what it was like when she got here. Thank you, Kathy.
Oh, thank you, Grania, and thank you, everybody, for being here and putting this together. And congratulations to the Spanish-speaking community. My name is Kathy. I am a compulsive overeater. I am abstinent today on the Gray Sheet. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the Gray Sheet without exception. I write them down, committed to my sponsor. I don't eat no matter what, and abstinence is the most important thing in my life without exception. And I am here today to build my defense against the first bite. And my abstinent date is April 27, 1983. And I came to my first Gray Sheet meeting in July of 1982. And I knew nothing about 12-step rooms. I didn't know what I was getting into. I was working with somebody who was a Gray Sheeter, and she spotted me. It wasn't hard. But she gave me a Gray Sheet, and she said, go to a meeting. The meetings are in Cambridge. And I just have to say, in terms of the community, when I came in, Nora, Peggy, and Laura were here. And I heard them speak frequently. And you can hear their message today, 45 years later, they're still saying stuff like, it's the most important thing in my life. I do it without exception, no matter what. And I need the support of this community. And that was the message that I needed to hear. So you can see it took me 9 months to get abstinent. At that time, OA, you could get a GreySheet at regular OA meetings, and you could get a sponsor at regular OA meetings. And one time when I was at a GreySheet meeting, I was talking with somebody, and she said, let's go to the regular OA meetings. The times are more convenient. The meetings are more convenient, and the people are nicer. And so I thought, okay, it was all the same to me. I didn't know the difference. So I started going to regular OA meetings, and I also kept going to the GreySheet meetings. And it was very slowly, it dawned on me what the difference was. And I remember, I didn't want to get a sponsor. The big thing for me was doing it without exception. I did not want to do it without exception, because I knew my boyfriend, who is now my husband, would totally flip out with anger, which he did. And, but we're still together anyway, and I'm still abstinent, thank God. But anyway, I remember one night I had the GreySheet food plan. I was going to a lot of GreySheet meetings, and had a sponsor from regular OA. And I remember one night after dinner, I waited to measure my meal, and I put everything away. And then I went back and I ate some more vegetables. So I called a GreySheeter, and she said, that's not abstinent, and it's just vegetables today. In no time, you're going to be into the sugar. And I remember thinking, what? That's crazy. That's, ugh. So I called a regular OA person, and she said, you're being too hard on yourself. It's just vegetables. And I thought, oh my God, I can't hear that. I cannot hear that. I also heard at regular meetings, people would frequently, this is my experience, people would say, I was home from work today sick, and I got into the food, but it's okay because I'm at a meeting. And I remember someone else saying, I had a fight with my boyfriend today, but it's okay. I got into the food, but it's okay because I'm at a meeting now. And I heard somebody come in to qualify one night, and she had been my sponsor at one point in regular OA, and she had gained about 50 pounds, and she had binged over the weekend, but she hadn't eaten that day, and so she was speaking. And I was like, what? And then the next day I went to a GreySheet meeting, and the speaker had 6 months of abstinence. I don't remember her name. She was crying her heart out through the whole qualification. She was not eating in the midst of some personal, painful difficulty. And when she stopped speaking, every room in the hand shot up. It was like electricity. And I thought, this is where I need to be. Every day, people would come to the meetings, and they would talk about how they got through the day. They had a cranky boss. They forgot part of their lunch. Something happened, but they made it through the day. They made phone calls. People told them what to do, and they made it through the day. And it was like listening to GreySheet warriors coming and saying, this is how I got through the day today. It was a difficult day, and I'm abstinent. Or it was an easy day, but I didn't forget who I am. I'm abstinent. The message I got from that experience was that, I'm a people pleaser. I want people to like me. And the hardest thing about weighing and measuring in restaurants for me was that to put my own needs first, to be able to act in my best interest when people around me were uncomfortable. For some reason, people were uncomfortable with my weighing and measuring in public. Or they thought it was crazy that I wouldn't go to the bakery to buy the dessert for Christmas. He said, can't do that. I'll bring the paper goods, I'll bring the salad, not going into that kind of a store, cannot do it. And when I got abstinent, so the difference was that my experience. The people were very nice. They were very accepting, very loving. And they talked a lot about the steps and being spiritual, whatever. But what I heard in the Cambridge rooms was this is a disease, which at first I thought was crazy, thought they were being drama queens. But through my experience of eating through those 9 months of going to GreySheet in regular OA, it began to sink in until finally one day I found myself eating out of the garbage and it scared me to death. And I had started vomiting. And I knew from hearing people in Cambridge who were, and that's what they said, I'm a vomiter, that it was in and of its separate self, a separate compulsion, and it scared me to death. It scared me to death. So anyway, the message I got in Cambridge was that it's a disease and it's going to kill me. And it's not okay to pick up the food. It's never okay. I have no guarantee that I will ever come back. And what I heard, I remember hearing Sally speak. Sally was one of the people who started the Cambridge OA community. And she said, she used to say the built-in mental illness of this disease is the built-in forgetter. So I have to keep going to meetings to remember. And she also talked about, and I heard this all the time too, was from going to meetings, the most natural thing for me to think is, I want to eat. From going to enough meetings and hearing enough people say the mantra, I heard, don't eat no matter what. So it became, as soon as I heard eat, then I would hear, don't eat no matter what. And in that moment between I want to eat and the thought, don't eat, there's a moment in there where I have a choice. And that's where my recovery is. My abstinence depends on that moment. If I choose to eat, I'm gone. I really don't think I could go through another withdrawal. But in that moment, I can choose to be abstinent, and I can choose to do whatever it takes to stay abstinent, whether it's get on my knees, make a phone call, jump up and down, take a shower, whatever. And every time I get through those moments where I feel like I'm going to die if I don't eat something, I build abstinent muscle. And eventually those thoughts and cravings, they come less often and they become less intense. Because I have a craving when I'm eating, a craving.
Excuse me, Kathy, 2 more minutes.
Thank you. I need to eat to overcome the craving. And it's insatiable and irresistible. The other thing I want to say is that keeping true to the GreySheet message is not easy. My experience was I moved to New York when I had about 2.5 years. And people were coming in from OA and saying, you can't do this. And we're going to do this. We're going to do it with exception. We're going to, these foods are healthy, whatever. And then the New York community, stayed strong. People bonded together, support each other, and it's grown. Then I moved to Connecticut. And the same thing was happening in Connecticut. People would say, we're going to keep the GreySheets under the table. We're not going to say it's a GreySheet meeting. And your abstinence is between you and your sponsor. And I was like, oh my God, please God help me. And people were getting mad at me for saying that stuff. And I said, look, someone said, you're going to take your basketball and go play someplace else. And I just said, look, I need a strong community. I need to know if this is a GreySheet meeting or if it's not. If it's not, that's fine. I just need to know. Because if that's the case, yes, I will go someplace else and start a meeting because I know I cannot do this by myself. And now fast forward, we have GSA, and guess what? Same stuff goes on. There's always going to be people who want to come in and do it differently. Or that's why we have a clarified GreySheet now, because people were trying to add foods or whatever. But the thing is, I'm an addict. We're all addicts. And we think we know better. We have a better idea. We think we're special and different. And we don't have to follow the rules. And so it takes a community. When I remember talking to somebody who was in the early days of Cambridge, and I said, how did you do it? And they said, you circle the wagons and you help each other. So stick with the winners, call people who are committed to this way of life, because as was said, there are other ways to do other food plans. But this is the only place we hear it's a disease. And it's the only place that people are doing the same thing. And it's the only place that I can get the kind of support I need to be in the world. And I'll just wrap it up. The way I finally got abstinent, I was going out to dinner with my boyfriend at the time. And he was very angry and very dead set against this whole thing. But I just knew that I had to do this without exception. I made a conscious decision to join this community. And so before we went out, I said to him, before we go out, I have to talk to you about something. And, you know, someone says that, someone you're dating, you know, you might think, oh, he's going to break up with me. But I said, if I have to choose between you and the gray sheet, it's the gray sheet. And it wasn't any sort of like, you know, strong woman, you know, decision. It was about, I knew I would lose myself. I would be gone. So I'm very, and I have to make that decision every day. And it gets easier and better. Just, you know, hang in there, help each other.
Sweetheart.
That's time. Thank you, Phyllis. Just hang in, help each other. And it gets better, easier, and it gets wonderful. It really does get wonderful. So thank you, everybody. And God bless this community. I love the Spanish community. I love your commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm just going to take 1 minute and then I'm going to ask Joey if he'd like to say anything. As I mentioned, Joey is also on the Board of Trustees and was very instrumental in helping the Spanish community get started. When he was the chair of the Literature Committee, he was in charge of getting the Gray Sheet translated into Spanish. This is a selfish program. I need a strong Gray Sheet community to survive, and I need to give it away to keep it, and I can only give it to people who want it. So I need a community around me who wants what I have, so I can give it to them so that I can stay abstinent, because that's the most important thing. My abstinence is the most important thing in my life. Joey?
Thanks, Grania. Bienvenidos, amigos, amigas, damas, caballeras. Mi nombre es Josevito, but you could call me Joey. Soy abstinente. Un agradecido. Wow, that's as far as I could go in Spanish. Sorry, I have a Spanish blood, but unfortunately, you know, I didn't learn how to speak Spanish, no matter how my grandparents wanted me to speak, you know, Spanish at that time. I'm from Long Island, New York, but I grew up in the Philippines, and you know the history of the Philippines. So welcome, everyone. It's a gift for me to be abstinent today. I had people in my life that revolves around my abstinence. You know, I remember when Grania had told me, I remember I was part of the literature committee. I was the chair, and there was a new group. You know, you guys were trying to translate the version of the GreySheet food plan, and I doubt myself, you know, because I never learned how to speak Spanish. But today I am abstinent. I weigh and measure 3 meals of the GreySheet with no exception. By the way, my abstinence is June 7, 2013. Junio 7, 2013. That's as far as I could know. You know, it's an amazing journey for me. All I could say is that just do it one day at a time. You know, weigh and measure your food. You know, get a sponsor. This is the best thing that ever happened to me. You know, I came here like what other people had said, I just want to lose the weight. I was morbidly obese when I came in, and now I got a body that I never knew, that I never thought that I could have. You know, it's good to lose the weight. Yeah, that's fine. But there's so much that I learned at 12 steps. Just the ability to understand myself. You know, I am a compulsive eater. I eat because I want to mask my emotions. I want to eat because I was resentful. I want to eat because somebody looked at me the way I don't want them to look at me. Or so many reasons. I ate because I'm happy. I ate because there's a gathering in my family. You know us, we eat, we gather every Sunday, you know, family dinner. But today, I eat without exception. No matter what. I go to restaurants, I go to those places that I go, I bring my weight. I bring a scale. I bring a cup. I bring a spoon, no matter what. So I'm so excited for every one of you. Welcome, bienvenidos to the Spanish GreySheet community. And we're here, Grania and I were here. I'm one of the board members. I also have Joyce, who's our treasurer. We are here to support you to the best that we can. You know, we had people who'd been so helpful with us. Marcella, Yami, Gabi, all those people who wanted to be part of this community. They're here for us to support you, you know, and if you have any questions, we'll do the best that we can. And that's about it. Thank you, Grania.
Thank you, Joey.